Welcome to the Networking Star Podcast. I am Jeffery Boyle. Here I interview peak performers in their industries, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes who encourage us to have, be, and do more in life. Today, I'm with Bri Seeley. Bri is an entrepreneur, a TEDx speaker. She helps women start profitable businesses, and she's the founder of Success Becomes Me. Welcome to Networking Star, Bri.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
So I was explaining before we started recording, I'd gone through a lot of your reels and I saw just kind of your story. To me, it's very exciting to kind of hear about the process that you went through to be a TEDx speaker. Explain a little bit of that process. To me, that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I kind of always knew or figured at some point that I would be on a TEDx stage, but it actually wasn't on my radar at all. What's interesting about my process is that almost everything that's a big move for me in my life and business comes to me through meditation. So it was January 2020, and I was sitting on my meditation cushion one morning in New York City and got this very clear visual in my head. And I kind of looked down in this meditation. I'm standing on this big red dot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm giving a TED talk right now. And I knew two things in that visualization. One, I knew that my significant other was there supporting me. At the time, I'd been single for, I think, about 11 years. And the other thing I knew was that my TED talk was leading to a book agent, which was also leading to a book deal. And so, of course, I think in my mind, like, oh, this is going to happen next week, right? Like, I'm going to have a TED talk next week. Well, we all know what happened shortly after January 2020. So you had asked earlier what my process was. So I have the visual, I have the visualization. I start incorporating that into my daily practice, seeing myself, feeling myself, envisioning myself on this red dot. And then I start deciding, okay, what am I going to speak about? Getting clarity of what is my pitch going to be? And then I'm still visualizing. I start applying, researching what applications are open, sending out my applications, getting denial, getting rejection, getting all these things, right? And then, of course, the pandemic hits, things shut down, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to be applying for a while, kind of paused it, but kept refining my messaging, kept refining who am I, what am I talking about? And then as things started to reopen, applied more, refined more, got rejected again, refined more, applied more, got rejected again. And finally, it was an application I submitted in January 2022 that I found out in June of 2022, I was accepted, and I gave the talk in November of 2022.
No, I loved understanding that process and even reading on your Instagram account just how nervous you are, how many revisions. So many times entrepreneurs, and the reason why I wanted to start with that is you're an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, right? You teach women and you empower women. It's a really wonderful story. But so many times entrepreneurs, especially wannabe entrepreneurs, start off with all this enthusiasm, and then they give up after they get punched in the stomach the first time. And I sometimes say, being an entrepreneur is a blood sport. You got to be able to get your nose bloody and then come back for more. Explain to me how this has empowered you to empower more women through this process of failure, then finally achieving your vision.
I always remind myself, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of my clients as well, is that not every opportunity is a good fit for you. And that's actually okay. If every opportunity was a good fit for all of us, we'd be overwhelmed. We wouldn't have the capacity for it, right? So I always remember and think to myself, like, okay, well, if that was a no, that means it just wasn't the right opportunity. And I also firmly believe that any opportunity that's meant for us will not pass us by. Or if it's meant for us at a different time, it'll come back around. And so I have in my personal journey, and again with clients, and even my first book was all about this, is that level of faith that you have, knowing that if you can envision it, if you can see it, you can bring it to life. It is possible for you, but it might take a few punches in the face, a few punches in the gut, a few no's, multiple no's, many no's. And you really, truly do just have to keep that inner knowing that if you've been called towards this thing, it's possible for you, and you have the availability to call in the resources you need to bring it to life.
Yeah. It truly is. people talk about overnight success or somebody having luck. That's why I always go back to Edna E. Mode from The Incredibles. I've got a lot of kids. Luck prefers, favors I totally jacked that up, but luck favors the prepared baby. There, I got it. But she is so funny how she does that, but it's absolutely correct. I've enjoyed also, as you're going through and talking about, your success, I saw one of your reels that talked about raising your prices, right? Raising it to what you're worth. So many times people devalue themselves. And I like that post a lot because you're telling your ladies, these ladies that follow you, you're worth a whole bunch. Explain a little bit about how you're encouraging, and how proud you were to raise your prices.
The first thing that I usually talk about with female entrepreneurs is the fact that they're undercharging. It is a conversation that I am having sometimes daily, always weekly, definitely monthly with women, because we tell all these stories about how we can't charge what our value is. And so the way that I teach people to price things is basically an equal exchange of value. So you're giving of your value to another person. They are receiving of that value. And then in exchange, they're giving you back value in the equal amount, but just in a different form. So I always remind women that it's so important. You don't want to devalue the services that you're providing or the products that you're providing, because there's going to be some sort of level of resentment at some point. You're going to get burnt out. And for me, for the most part, most people tell me my prices are very reasonable. I just had a sales call last week with someone, and she's like, your price is like a third of what other people charge for similar things. But in January, I had a woman who I had a sales call with, and she said, your prices are astronomical, and I don't know who would pay those prices. And anytime I hear that, it is an indication for me that I need to step up and raise that value. Because when I see the value and when I charge for the value, other people then see that value as well. And what's incredible is I've actually had more people enroll in that single program in the last month than I probably usually have in 6 months. And not a single person has scoffed at the new price. They didn't even know there was an old price, but they have all told me how incredibly reasonable and generous this new price is. And so I always just like to reframe my paradigms, my perspectives, because I don't know. I just think it's really important for us to stay in alignment with that level of value and then call in the same level in return.
Yeah. And say I refer back to, I always like to, I guess the reason why I do this as much as anything is I really like to meet cool people that inspire me. And so many times people think, oh, it's that huge personality, or it's this, or it's that. So many times it's just these business people that are empowering other people. You really are a leader within the industry, because you're trying to inspire women to accomplish more, and really to see their huge value that they have within the entrepreneur industry. I guess it's not so much an industry, just more of a frame of thought, which kind of leads me to, you are a big believer in visualization. And we were talking a little bit beforehand, and sometimes people mock visualization, which to me is just craziness. Explain to me why visualization is such a big, important part of not just being an entrepreneur, but being a happy human being.
Yeah. So I like to explain this with a metaphor. So if you had, say, like a bow and arrow, or, something, you were like taking aim and you wanted to hit a particular mark, you wouldn't just take that bow and arrow and just aim it anywhere and expect it to hit the bullseye, right? You need to know exactly what that bullseye looks like. You need to know exactly where it is. You need to practice over and over and over and over and over again, hitting that bullseye. And that's all visualization is envisioning that bullseye and practicing mentally over and over and over again, hitting it, so that when you take the shot, you hit that bullseye, right? There have been studies done around this. Michael Phelps used to do this. He used to envision himself in the pool over and over and over and over and over again, popping out of that pool, in seeing himself look at the clock and know that he had won a gold medal, right? And I think it's just, you look at any peak performer, they have some sort of level of visualization. They may not call it that. You can call it whatever you want. But if you're not practicing your future in the now moment, it's going to be very difficult for you to hit that mark?
It's pretty interesting you talk about Michael Phelps, but visualizers are every industry. Just a lot of times we think about as athletes, and it's a wonderful metaphor because you're able to see the battle occur in just a few minutes. But we see it everywhere. Everyone from Oprah to famous athletes to politicians and business leaders now is becoming this self-care of meditation. Explain to me a little bit about your process, because I love to learn from successful entrepreneurs what they do to visualize and to be able to do this daily meditation.
The thing that's most important to me is feeling it. There have actually been studies done about the magnetic resonance of our brains versus the magnetic resonance of like our hearts. And our heart actually has a more powerful magnetic resonance in the physical world than our head does. And so it's one thing to think about yourself having the life that you want or the results that you want. It's another thing to drop into your body and feel as if that's your reality in this moment. Small funny story, when I found out I got my TED Talk, actually there were two first things I did. One, I hired a personal trainer because I wanted to be super strong and like just feel really the strongest I've ever felt on that stage. And the second thing I did was I actually went and bought the shoes that I was going to wear on that stage. So when I started practicing that TED Talk, I would literally stand in my kitchen here wearing those shoes and close my eyes and envision myself on that red dot speaking my talk over and over and over and over again, because I didn't just want to know it in my mind. I wanted to feel in that moment like I was on that stage, so that when I stepped on that stage, it wasn't the first time I was stepping on that stage. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't, like there was no nervous energy. And I was able to step on that stage fully, completely, totally confidently because I had stepped on that stage every day for the months leading up to it in my mind.
So tell me a little bit about your typical client, because obviously, and just as reading through and trying to understand you better, it really seems to me that you do a lot of that empowerment. Explain to me how a typical client comes to you and how it is that you build that person up.
I work with kind of it's the same woman. She's just at different stages on her journey. And the first one is someone that has not yet either started or not yet monetized their business. And when they come to me, there's generally a lot of doubt around whether or not it's going to work. There's a lot of doubt around whether or not they can become their financial stability in their life without, say, a day job. There's just a lot of insecurity around bringing that idea, that business forth. So I work with them. Well, I work with both levels from the inside out. It's really important to me, if you want to run a successful business, you have to first be the successful entrepreneur on the inside in order for that to manifest on the outside. So there is a lot of mindset work. There is a lot of visualization work. There is a lot of imposter syndrome work. There's a lot of that inner game work, because you can pretend on the outside all you want, but if you're spending all day, every day doubting and in fear and just thinking you're going to have to go back and get a job, that business is never going to be successful. So that's kind of the first level of women that I work with. And then I also do work with women who have established businesses and they're really ready to like double or triple their revenue, their operations. And those women typically come to me when they're burnt out. They're usually a solopreneur. They're doing everything themselves. They're likely trading time for money. So if they want to make more money, they have to put in more time, but oftentimes they don't have more time. So they can't make more money. And it's this vicious loop, right? So we sit down and really strategize what are the ways to help you get out of that loop so that you can create more wealth in your business without sacrificing yourself in the meantime.
So where is that? Sometimes it's a moment, sometimes it's a series of moments. When is it that solopreneur that you're talking about sees, oh my gosh, that's it? So what is typically that trigger that helps that person believe that they can double and triple their income?
Of course, it's different for everyone, but I think, unfortunately, a lot of women, like I said, come to me when they're burnt out. And there's this like, if I continue trying to do this, things are not going to go well. Something has to shift. I'm feeling like I'm empty every day. I'm overworking myself. The money is not matching how much energy I'm putting in. There's like a whole slew of kind of symptoms that come up. And so a lot of women in that place, some women reach out to me and they're like, I just know that I'm ready for more, and like, that's a great place to be. But a lot of women are at that point where they're just depleted and they're overworked and they're overwhelmed, and they keep doing what they've been doing because they know how to do that, but it's not creating different results. And at some point, something's got to give. And so that's kind of the moment when they reach out to me and they're like, I can't do this anymore. I need help to figure out what this looks like on the other side.
So what do you think that the number one thing that a person has to believe to go from being burnt out, from being bored? A lot of that comes from boredom. A lot of them comes from just being overwhelmed. What is it that finally takes that person from that burnout stage to 2 and 3x their previous income?
I think a lot of it, especially for women, is believing that we deserve it. So many of us have been brought up with like, well, you have to work really, 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 really hard in order to like earn a penny, or, you have to overprove yourself, or you have to like all of these things to make yourself look like or be like you're worthy of the money. And what I remind women of is that is inherent to your being. You don't have to work hard for it. You don't have to push yourself to the brink. You don't have to go overboard to prove to people how good you are at what you do. You just have to be it. And so there's some guilt tied up in that. There's some, programming tied up in that. And we just have to kind of untangle some of the knots in that ball of yarn to start seeing the truth. And that truth is you can have whatever life you want. You might have to do a little bit in order to create it and bring it to life, but it's possible for you to have that vision of success that you desire on your terms.
Yeah, I love that. And just kind of as a final comment, I'll ask you on this one. So many times people visualize, and so many times people move from visualization to fantasy, right? The fantasy of almost like the winning the lottery type of mentality. What is the thing that you explain as you're going through with your clients from visualization to actually making that happen? What is that missing link that so many people move from visualization to fantasy and they miss that really key part to get what you want?
Yeah, you and I touched on this briefly before we hit record, and that is action. So a lot of the manifestation stuff out there is like, well, if you just think hard enough about the red car, it just shows up in your driveway. And I'm like, but you actually have to like, one, go to the dealership and you have to test drive all the red cars to figure out exactly which one you want and then what features you want on it. And then you have to sit down and talk to the guy and, get your credit approved and sign the papers and do all the things. And like, maybe they'll deliver it to you in your driveway, but you still have to be the one to go out and take the action. Sitting around thinking about wanting all this money, or I'll say when I was single, a lot of my friends would be like, Bri, he's not going to come knocking on your door. Like, you actually need to be, I'm a homebody. They're like, you need to leave the house. You want this thing that you say you want. You have to go meet the world to get it or to call it in, right? You have to put yourself in the right place at the right time to bring that in. And so action is a huge fundamental piece of bringing in and bringing to life anything that you're visualizing. The TED Talk did not just come knocking on my door. I had to apply multiple times and get rejected multiple times to make it happen, right? Anything you want, you're going to have to put yourself out there for. And I tell people all the time, because a lot of people are scared to take those actions, say, listen, when you go out and you put skin in the game and you let the universe, God, whatever you believe in, know that you're invested in it, it will meet you there. But if you're sitting around waiting for the universe to make the first move, you are going to be waiting for a very long time.
Way too long. And I think that's why so many new entrepreneurs, motivated entrepreneurs, miss the what, how, and the why to be able to take action so they don't have all these obstacles that are weighing them down. So tell us to finish off, where do they find you and how do they find those infinity glasses that you've got?
Well, you just start clicking on ads on Facebook and pretty soon they pop up. It's great. So let's see. All right. So you can find me. My website is my name, briseeley.com. My Instagram is my name, Bri Seeley. My TikTok is my name, Bri Seeley. I'm Bri Seeley all over the place, everywhere, basically. And have lots of cool new stuff coming up. I'm launching a women's conference. There's like all sorts of amazing things happening in my world. So if you feel resonant at all with anything I've said today, please reach out and come have a conversation with me.
Well, thanks so much for being with me, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime. And I wear glasses, but I don't know that those infinity glasses are going to look as good on me as they do on you.
I mean, you never know until you try.
Well, thanks for being with me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks.